So last time we gathered together 2 weeks ago, we looked at how Genesis points to Jesus. What has God done to bring about the blessing that he promises? Now that's interesting. It's there at the beginning of the book of Genesis in the first half. This time we're getting into the second half of Genesis, and it's less to do now with what God has done, because that's been dealt with, and more about how are we to respond. What are we supposed to do to respond to the God who has loved us and graciously given us all these things? So today we're thinking about the life of Jacob. Now I would guess many of us will know some of those great well-known stories, the events that are in Jacob's life. But maybe we're not sure how all those stories fit together. The Jacob who steals his brother's blessing, Jacob's ladder, Jacob who wrestles with God. But how do all these stories fit into his story? Well, today, that's our task. We're going to find out how that all happens. So far, we've looked at the book of Genesis 1 and 2, the creation story, Adam and Eve. Genesis 3, the fall, where we have that rebellion against God. And from there on in Genesis 4 onwards, we get that downward spiral. Things getting worse and worse until God sends that worldwide flood. But in Genesis chapter 12, things change. God chooses Abram and he establishes a covenant with Abram and his offspring. The promise of the land, the promise of many offspring, the promise of blessing, and all the families of the world to be blessed through his offspring. So last time we saw how God tells Abram that God himself will pay the price if the covenant is broken. It's an interesting session. If you've not seen it 2 weeks ago, the session we had, please go on YouTube. They're all recorded, these sessions. You can go on YouTube and watch that session from 2 weeks ago on how Genesis points to Jesus. So Abram and Sarah, they're struggling with the fact that they have no children. Sarah was barren and past childbearing age. Abram and Sarah try to help God out, and Sarah gives Abram her slave Hagar, and they have a son. But God says, no, that's not the way it's going to happen. He's not the one through which the promised offspring will come. And sure enough, God is faithful. God keeps his promise, and the promised son comes, Isaac. He grows up and marries Rebecca, and as his married life continues, they have the same problem. Rebecca is barren. So what will they do? So we read in Genesis chapter 25. This is where we're beginning. Genesis 25, verse 21. And Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren. And the Lord granted his prayer, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. The children struggled together within her, and she said, if it is thus, why is this happening to me? So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other, the older shall serve the younger. So here we're told, she inquires of the Lord, she finds out she's going to have twins. They will both become nations, but it's the younger who will be in the promised line. We're to watch the second born, and so the storyline will concentrate on him, on Jacob. We're then told of the birth and each one is described, each of these twins. Genesis 25, verse 24. When her days to give birth were completed, behold, there were twins in her womb. The first came out red, all his body like a hairy cloak, so they called his name Esau. Afterward his brother came out with his hand holding Esau's heel, so his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. The most significant fact here given to us is that Jacob comes from the womb, comes from his mother, holding on to his brother's heel. We are told that is why he's given the name Jacob. It means something like heel grabber, heel catcher. The understanding of this is significant. To grab someone's heel is to trip them up. If done deliberately, it is to trip them so that you can get ahead. And that is very apt for this man as he tries to get ahead by tripping people up, by tricking them, deceiving people. We're going to find Jacob deceives Esau. Jacob deceives his father. Jacob deceives his uncle. That's the life of Jacob. Well, when the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, we're told. Genesis chapter 25, verse 27. Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man dwelling in tents. Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Once when Jacob was cooking stew, Esau came in from the field and he was exhausted. And Esau said to Jacob, "Let me eat some of that red stew, for I am exhausted." Therefore his name was called Edom. Jacob said, "Sell me your birthright." Esau said, "I'm about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me?" Jacob said, "Swear to me now." So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. This is Jacob, taking advantage of his brother's hunger and weakness. Now, we've already been told by a prophecy that the older will serve the younger. And the birthright is about your status in the family, your inheritance. You'll be the next leader of the family if you've got the birthright, the firstborn. God has already determined that will be Jacob. It's through Jacob the family line will pass. But Jacob, being the deceiver, the heel grabber, the hustler, the con man, is not waiting for God to do something. He'll get this status in his own way. That's our introduction to Jacob. He's the man who will deceive and swindle and cheat, everything he can do to make sure he gets his own way. Now, we're going to have to wait some time before we pick up the story of Jacob and Esau, where it continues, because there's now a full chapter which has nothing really to do with Jacob and Esau. We've been introduced to the boys, but now something else happens. In Genesis 26, a famine interrupts the proceedings. We've already seen a famine in the story of Abram, and there, well, Abram did not appear in a good light. God has just promised him land. He just said to Abram, your offspring, you're going to have lots of them. God is going to bless you. But what does Abram do in this famine? He leaves the land pretended Sarah was his sister, so she's taken into someone else's house, and doesn't believe God will bless him and take care of him. So will Isaac do any better? Well, we're told, Genesis 26, verse 1. Now there was a famine in the land, besides the former famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went to Gerar, to Abimelech, king of the Philistines, and the Lord appeared to him and said, do not go down to Egypt, dwell in the land of which I shall tell you. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you, and I will bless you. For to you and to your offspring I will give all these lands, and I will establish the oath that I swore to Abraham your father. I will multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven, and will give to your offspring all these lands, and in your offspring all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. So right at the start of this storyline, Isaac is blessed by God. God tells him his offspring are the chosen line. God will be with him and will bless him. So what does Isaac do in the light of these promises? Well, chapter 26, verse 7, when the men of the place asked him about his wife, he said, she is my sister. For he feared to say my wife, thinking lest the men of the place should kill me because of Rebekah, because she was attractive in appearance. Time and time again, when we see the patriarchs, we see them acting in this way. God blesses them. God speaks to them. God makes promises to them and to their offspring. But they fail. They fail in their actions. So what will God do? What does God do when his people fail? Well, God has promised to bless them. So what do you expect God to do? Genesis chapter 26, verse 12. Isaac has just denounced his wife and effectively said he doesn't believe that God will look after him. And we read Genesis 26, verse 12, and Isaac sowed in that land and reaped in the same year 100-fold. The Lord blessed him, and the man became rich and gained more and more until he became very wealthy. Now with the patriarchs, we see this time and time again. They're failing to act according to the great promises, but God continues to bless them. Well, there's one more episode in chapter 26 that is worth thinking about. Isaac, blessed by God, becomes very wealthy and therefore powerful. And the king of the city where he lives feels threatened. So the blessing that comes from God brought persecution. Genesis chapter 26, verse 16. And Abimelech said to Isaac, go away from us, for you are much mightier than we. So Isaac has to leave the city, the place of safety. There's a famine in the land, but he's told to leave. He and all that he owns are cast out. We're told that they go and pitch the tents in a wadi, a dried up riverbed, and there they dig wells. But each time they dig a well, the men of the city come and persecute them. So Genesis 26, verse 19. But when Isaac's servants dug in the valley and found there a well of spring water, the herdsmen of Gerar quarrelled with Isaac's herdsmen, saying, the water is ours. But God is still with Isaac. Isaac may act foolishly. Isaac may suffer from persecution. Persecution that comes from those around who are jealous of God's blessing to Isaac. God continues to bring that blessing. So we read in verse 24, and the Lord appeared to him the same night and said, I am the God of Abraham, your father. Fear not, for I am with you, and will bless you, and will multiply your offspring for my servant Abraham's sake. So in chapter 26, we learn what it's like to be part of the chosen of God. Yes, it is true. Isaac fails in his actions. He doesn't trust God as he ought. But nevertheless, God blesses him. And yes, persecution comes. The men of the city, they come after kicking Isaac out of the city to the wells that they have dug and say, no, you cannot have the water. But God continues to bless. There are lessons there, I'm sure, for us as Christians. So we move on to Genesis 27, verse 1. When Isaac, we're back with now Isaac and Jacob and Esau. When Isaac was old and his eyes were dim so that he could not see, he called Esau his oldest son and said to him, my son. And he answered, here I am. He said, behold, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and prepare for me delicious food, such as I love, and bring it to me, so that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die. This is another of those familiar stories that we know of about Jacob. So Isaac, we know, favours Esau. He's getting old. He cannot see. He's blind. So he prepares to give the blessing to his firstborn son, Esau. So this is a really big moment, because we know that Jacob is the chosen one. But Isaac is going to give the blessing to Esau. Now, Isaac's wife, Rebekah, is looking for a different outcome. Rebekah and Jacob are going to deceive Isaac into giving the blessing to Jacob. We've already seen how Jacob is already the deceiver, the cheater, the swindler. Well, this is now continuing. So, Genesis chapter 27, verse 5. Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for game and bring it, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, I heard your father speak to your brother Esau. Bring me game and prepare for me delicious food, that I may eat it and bless you before the Lord, before I die. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice as I command you. So Rebekah prepares a meal for Jacob to take into his father Isaac. She dresses him in Isaac's clothes. She puts animal skins on him, on his arms and on his neck, and sends him in with the food. And it works. Isaac blesses Jacob, promising riches and authority and blessing to his son. So Jacob's name means the heel grabber, a deceiver, a cheater, and he's certainly being that. He's living up to his name. So in verse 36, Esau said, is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has cheated me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he has taken away my blessing. Now I want you to imagine for a moment Esau's reaction. He's had his blessing stolen by his younger brother. So when he finds out that Jacob has deceived his father, that he's received the blessing, what is he going to do? Well, Genesis 27, verse 41. Now Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are approaching. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. He's comforting himself. He's saying, I will get my revenge on my brother. Now think about this for a moment. Here we are. We've got the family chosen by God to bring blessing to the whole earth. How do you think it's going? We have a cheater who seems to want to deceive everyone in the family. And his brother now wants to kill him. I suggest we should have reached the conclusion things aren't going that well with this family. But this is the chosen family. This is the one whom God is going to bring about the blessing to the whole world. Well, one thing that we can learn from the Bible is that God does not give up on his chosen people. He knows what he's doing and he's going to achieve his purposes. But I think we can all agree God has got a long way to go with Jacob. He's not the ideal candidate, is he, to bring blessing to the world. So Jacob, because his brother is threatening to kill him, is forced to flee. He flees from his brother, he runs away, and he's sent away by his father and mother back to the family roots. They've gone to Rebekah's family and told he's to go there and find himself a wife. So he sets off, and we're going to see in the next few chapters how God begins the long process of dealing with Jacob, the cheater. He hasn't got far on his journey when we encounter another well-known episode in Jacob's life. Chapter 28 and verse 12. Genesis 28. And Jacob dreamed, and behold, there was a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give to you and to your offspring. Your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south, and in you and your offspring shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Behold, I am with you, and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. So again, a well-known story, isn't it? Jacob's ladder. God comes to Jacob in a dream. He assures Jacob he's the chosen one. All the promises given to Abraham and Isaac now pass on to him. He's in the promised line. His offspring will be the ones who bring blessings to the nations. God will be with him. The land will be theirs. And the dream is not just God speaking, but a vision of how heaven and earth are connected. Heaven is open. It's not closed. God is there. He's standing at the top. And we have his messengers, angels, ascending and descending on this stairway or ladder. There is a stairway to heaven. Now, Jacob is clearly challenged by this. We'll see that in a moment. You see, If heaven is open, if God really is able to look down upon this earth and see everything that happens, if God's messengers can come and go reporting everything that they encounter here on earth, then that changes everything. The earth is an open book to God. He sees us. He sees our actions. So there's a stairway to heaven. Before we continue this though, I want us just to see what Jesus makes of this. Do you remember in John chapter 1, we get the introduction in John chapter 1 to John's Gospel. Then towards the end of John chapter 1, Jesus has an encounter with Nathanael. Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him and said of him, "Behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom there is no deceit." Nathanael said to him, "How do you know me?" Jesus answered him, "Before Philip came, you were under the fig tree, I saw you." Nathanael answered him, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God, you are the King of Israel." Jesus answered him, "Because I said to you, I saw you under the fig tree, do you believe? You will see greater things than these." And he said to him, "Truly, truly, I say to you, you will see heaven opened, and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man." So Jacob sees this connection between heaven and earth. If our desire is to have the right to enter heaven itself, and yet God can see everything about us, yet we still want to come to the throne of God Almighty, then we are interested in that connection. But here in John's Gospel, Jesus is telling us that he is that connection. He tells Nathanael, it's on him, the Son of Man, that you see the angels coming back and forth. And what is most interesting in John's Gospel is Nathanael is described as a man in whom there is no deceit. No cheating, no deceit, no deceiving with this man. In Genesis 28, we have a man full of deceit who sees this connection. But God is at work. Jacob has a long way to go. So look at Jacob's response. He recognizes his need. Genesis 28, verse 20. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, "If God will be with me, and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God." Now I want you to think through for a moment how Jacob responds to this vision and to God's promise. You see, it doesn't sound like someone who has real faith. If you do this, God, if you do the things I ask for, if you do the things that I want you to do, then you can be my God. Now that surely is the wrong approach to God. You don't come to negotiate with a sovereign God. You don't need to come to negotiate with a gracious God. You don't need to come to God who has made a covenant with you to bless you. So Jacob clearly does not understand what's going on here. He carries on his way. Jacob comes to the home of his mother and he meets their family. The head of the family is his uncle, Laban. He has two daughters, Rachel and Leah. And Jacob is smitten by Rachel. Genesis 29. Jacob loved Rachel, and he said, I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel. Laban said, it is better that I give her to you than I should give her to any other man. Stay with me. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of the love he had for her. It's lovely, isn't it? He meets the daughter of his uncle and he falls in love with her straight away. He loves her so much, he's willing to serve 7 years, and it just seems like a few days. He can't wait for the wedding night. So the wedding takes place. There's lots of food, lots of drink. But the deceiver, the cheater, Jacob, has now met another deceiver, another cheater, his uncle Laban. And Jacob is about to find out what it feels like when he is deceived. Chapter 29, verse 25. And in the morning, this is his wedding night, he spent the night with his wife, and in the morning, behold, it was Leah. And Jacob said to Laban, what is this you have done to me? Did I not serve with you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me? Well, Laban explains. Leah is the older sister. They've got to get married before the younger one, so she had to be married off first. It's a well-known story in Jacob's life. He serves another 7 years to marry Rachel, and now he has 2 wives. But he also, of course, has 2 slave girls, and between them they have 11 sons. These are going to be the tribes of Israel. 11 sons. There is a 12th one to come, but he's not born just yet. The one that's to come is Benjamin. But for now, Jacob has seen enough, and he wants to get back home. But there's one more twist. Laban knows God has blessed him because of Jacob's presence, and he doesn't want him to go. So he persuades Jacob to stay a bit longer and work for some real wages, not just for wives. They agree a price, and Jacob says to Laban, let me pass through all your flock today, removing from it every speckled and spotted sheep and every black lamb, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and they shall be my wages. So his uncle Laban agrees, but he is a cheater as well, and he wants to cheat Jacob out of his wages. So chapter 30, verse 35, but that day Laban removed the male goats that were striped and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had white on it, and every lamb that was black, and put them in the charge of his sons. You see, here we have 2 deceivers trying to deceive each other. Laban has removed from the flock the goats and the sheep that he's agreed with Jacob that he could have as part of his wages. He removes them and sends them off to his sons. They're not now part of the flock. But Jacob comes up with a scheme of his own. His scheme will increase the portion of the flock that belonged to him. And by God's grace and blessing, he succeeds and he becomes wealthy. Laban is furious. He's not happy at all. And Jacob has to flee with all his possessions. Laban pursues after him. They meet up and in the end they're reconciled. So Jacob and all his possessions are now on their way back home. But he still has to face Esau. So how has God been teaching Jacob? Jacob thought he could receive the blessings through trickery, by his own scheming, by his own strength. But he'd come up against Laban, who was also a schemer. And Jacob learned what it felt like to be deceived. So God is dealing with Jacob, but Jacob is not there yet. The most important lesson of all is yet to come. And as he gets closer to meeting Esau, Jacob needs to know what sort of reception he will get. So he sends out some messengers. So we read chapter 32, verse 3. And Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau his brother in the land of Seir, the country of Edom, instructing them, Thus you shall say to my lord Esau, Thus says your servant Jacob, I have sojourned with Laban and stayed until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, male servants and female servants. I have sent to tell my lord, in order that I may find favour in your sight. And the messengers returned to Jacob, saying, We came to your brother Esau, and he's coming to meet you. And there are 400 men with him. Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. You can see why, can't you? 400 men. That's a big welcoming party. The chances are they're here for battle. So Jacob is afraid. He has already learnt his scheming ways are not enough. They don't always achieve the desired result. He was outsmarted by Laban. So the final lesson for Jacob is about to start. So turn to Genesis 32 and verse 24, one of the famous events in Jacob's life. And Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, Let me go, for the day has broken. But Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. And he said to him, What is your name? And he said, Jacob. Then he said, Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. For you have striven with God and with men, and you have prevailed. Then Jacob asked him, Please tell me your name. But he said, Why is it that you ask my name? And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, saying, For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered. Understanding this wrestling match is to understand Jacob's life. All along he's been scheming and hustling to get the blessing. But all along he's not just been contending with his father or just with Esau or just with Laban. He's been fighting God. And that is one wrestling match that you cannot win unless God allows you to. This man, who he thinks of as a man, he wrestles with and then realizes that it's God. Now, God can win that match with a single blow, and that is what happens. So he puts Jacob's hip out of joint. There is no way now that Jacob can wrestle, fight, carry on with this struggle. And the only thing Jacob can do is to cling on, to hang on, and ask for a blessing. No longer able to force a blessing, no longer able to get a blessing through his own efforts. Jacob says, I will not let you go unless you bless me. and God changes his name. And that's always significant in the Bible, when you get your name changed. He changes his name from Jacob to Israel. He's no longer the heel grabber, the cheater. He's now Israel. And that name, Israel, describes this encounter. Struggling or wrestling with God and prevailing. That is, he wrestles with God and he wins. In one sense, he's lost, has he not? His hip is out of joint. There is no way he can win this match. So he just clings on for the blessing. And therein is the victory. He comes into the wrestling match as a desperate man about to meet the man who vowed to kill him. He's the schemer, the deceiver, the cheater. But he leaves a different man. He leaves with a limp, a permanent reminder of that encounter. But now he has a new name, no longer the heel grabber, but the one who has found out how to win by clinging to God, because I've no choice. There's nothing else I can do, and ask for a blessing. Well, we're drawing to a close. We must finish up now. But let me tell you, there's a good outcome from Jacob's meeting with Esau. Jacob comes a new man. He comes humbly and respectfully. He's not trying to cheat. He's not trying to hustle. No longer trying to obtain things by his own schemes. He comes humbly and respectfully. And he's content now. He has the blessing, what he's been searching for all his life, what he's been scheming to get. Now he has it, not by scheming, but just by clinging to God and asking for a blessing, because there's nothing else he could do. He says to Esau, Genesis 33, verse 11, "Please accept my blessing that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough." Do you get that? I have enough, he says. I'm content. I'm no longer now scheming and cheating to get things. I have enough. And I have enough because God has graciously dealt with me. If you're a Christian, if you believe and trust in our Lord Jesus Christ, you have enough. God has dealt with you graciously. And the way to come to this God, that connection between heaven and earth, is to cling to God, to cling to our Lord Jesus Christ, and to look to him for the blessing. Amen.